Ever feel like you're running on that treadmill, pushing and striving, but never quite sure if you're actually in the driver's seat?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, today we're taking a deep dive into this Jewish proverb that might give us a whole new way of looking at all that.
Okay.
It says, everything is in the hands of heaven except for the fear of heaven.
It's a simple statement,
Yeah.
but it really packs a punch, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes you think, right? Because we live in this world where everybody's obsessed with control.
Right.
Like we optimize our calendars, we track our steps, we try to hack all the algorithms, like we actually think we can outsmart fate.
Exactly. And then this proverb comes along and throws a wrench in the whole thing.
It really does. So what does it even mean, this whole fear of heaven? For someone who maybe isn't super familiar with Jewish thought.
Well, it's not about like cowering before some kind of deity.
Right.
It's more about recognizing that there's a force that's bigger than all of us, and it shapes our lives in ways we don't always understand.
So it's not about being passive or like giving up on taking responsibility.
No, not at all.
Okay.
The source material we're looking at today really emphasizes that we do have free will,
Okay.
but it's not unlimited free will.
Right.
It operates within a larger framework,
Okay.
like a cosmic tapestry, you could say.
Okay, I like that cosmic tapestry.
Yeah.
So then how does this fear of heaven idea actually play out, like in a practical sense? How can we see this force, this tapestry in everyday life?
Well, the source material suggests that cultivating this fear of heaven starts with humility.
Okay, so not getting too caught up in our own ego.
Exactly. Acknowledging our limitations and being open to the idea that there's more to life than what we can see and control.
Okay, so it's not about like forcing things to go our way, but more about is surrendering the right word?
Surrender is a strong word, but yeah, it captures part of it.
Okay.
It's about trusting that even when things feel totally chaotic or unpredictable,
Yeah.
there's a deeper order to it all.
So it's like a shift in perspective.
Instead of freaking out about all the things that we can't control, maybe we choose to see it as part of some bigger plan.
Precisely. The source material actually uses a really cool analogy to illustrate this.
Ooh, I love a good analogy.
All right, well, think about a tapestry.
Okay.
From the back, it just looks like a jumble of threads, right?
Yeah. Total mess.
A chaotic mess. But then from the front,
Yeah.
this beautiful image emerges.
Okay.
It's the same with life. We don't always see the big picture,
Right.
but it's still there.
Wow. That is a really helpful analogy.
Right.
So you're saying that this fear of heaven can actually help us feel less anxious even when things are uncertain.
That's exactly what the source material says.
Okay.
It suggests that if we embrace this idea, it can be a source of strength and resilience.
Okay.
It helps us face life's challenges feeling grounded, knowing that we're not in this alone.
Yeah.
Even if we don't understand why things are happening, we can still trust that there's a purpose.
Okay, so this proverb is incredibly relevant to our lives today. Oh, absolutely.
Especially with all the pressure we feel to control everything. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, take a breath. You're not actually in charge of the universe.
Right.
Which can be kind of a relief.
It really can be. It's a liberating idea, but the source material does acknowledge that this is not an easy thing to wrap your head around, let alone actually put into practice.
It's hard.
You need real effort and intention to actually shift your mindset like that.
For sure. I mean, my to-do list alone makes my head spin. But I'm curious, what does the source material suggest are some practical steps we can take to cultivate this fear of heaven? Besides, giving up our to-do lists entirely.
Well, thankfully, it doesn't involve getting rid of all productivity.
Okay, good.
There are some practical things we can do, things that can help us shift our perspective and live more aware of this higher power.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
What are some of those suggestions?
Well, it starts with simple acts of awareness. Like the source emphasizes the importance of gratitude, taking time to appreciate the good things in our lives, even when things are hard, can be a powerful way to deal with the anxiety that comes with trying to control everything.
Yeah, gratitude can be really powerful.
It is.
But are there other ways to cultivate this fear of heaven? I'm guessing it's more than just writing in a gratitude journal.
Absolutely. It's definitely more than just some feel-good exercise.
Right.
The source material really dives into the specific actions and mindsets associated with this concept and how fear of heaven shows up in our relationships with others, our approach to work, and even how we understand success.
So this fear of heaven isn't just some abstract spiritual idea. It's about how we live our lives.
Exactly.
Every single day.
It's about recognizing that this concept impacts everything we do. Every choice we make. And the source material actually gives us some pretty fascinating examples of what that looks like in practice.
Okay, now this is getting really interesting. So this fear of heaven isn't just some abstract spiritual idea.
Mhm.
It's about how we live our lives day in and day out.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that this concept has implications for everything we do, every choice we make. And the source material provides some fascinating examples of what that might look like in practice.
Okay, I'm officially hooked. We need to dive deeper into these examples. But before we do, I think it's important to address something that might be on our listeners' minds. This whole idea of fear of heaven, it might seem a bit, well, religious for some people.
Mhm.
Is this concept only relevant to people who subscribe to a specific faith?
That's a great question. And the source material addresses this directly. It argues that this concept transcends any particular religion or belief system. It's a universal human longing for connection to something greater than ourselves, whether we call it God, the universe, or something else entirely.
So it's more about a way of being in the world than adhering to a specific dogma.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that there are forces at play that we might not fully understand, but that shape our lives nonetheless. And the source material makes a compelling case that embracing this understanding can lead to a deeper sense of meaning and purpose, regardless of our individual beliefs.
That's actually pretty profound. So are you saying that even if someone doesn't consider themselves religious or spiritual, this fear of heaven concept can still be relevant to their life?
Absolutely. It's about tapping into that innate human desire for something bigger than ourselves, something that connects us to the mystery and wonder of existence.
Okay, I'm loving where this conversation is going. We've unpacked the meaning of fear of heaven, explored its potential benefits, and even addressed its relevance for a diverse audience. But I'm dying to know more about those practical examples you mentioned. How does this actually play out in real life? What does it look like to live with this fear of heaven in a world that often feels like it's spinning out of control?
Well, that's where the source material gets really interesting. It delves into specific stories and teachings that illustrate how this concept can shape our actions, relationships, and even our understanding of success. And some of those examples might surprise you.
All right, you've officially piqued my curiosity. Let's dive into those examples and see how this ancient wisdom can be applied to our modern lives. This is where it gets really interesting.
So one example the source material points to is the story of Rabbi Akiva.
Okay.
He was a shepherd,
Hmm.
and he had like a really humble beginning, but he ended up becoming one of the most famous sages in Jewish history.
Okay, a shepherd turned sage. I'm listening.
So Rabbi Akiva always said that his success wasn't because he was so brilliant or ambitious,
Yeah.
but because he was constantly aware of this higher power
Mhm.
guiding his path. He believed that all his knowledge and wisdom were gifts,
Okay.
not something he'd earned on his own.
That's interesting. So it's like recognizing that even our talents and abilities aren't totally our own.
Yeah.
There's a humility there.
Yeah.
Like acknowledging that we're part of something much bigger.
Exactly. Rabbi Akiva's story really shows how this fear of heaven can make us feel grateful and humble,
Mm.
even when we achieve great things.
So it's not about pretending we didn't do anything
Mhm.
or that our efforts don't matter.
No, not at all.
Okay.
But it's about recognizing that we're not solely responsible for our successes.
Right. The source materials is suggesting that this kind of perspective can actually make us feel more fulfilled and content.
Yeah,
Like when we're not always trying to prove ourselves or get that pat on the back,
right.
we can connect with this deeper sense of purpose
Exactly.
that comes from aligning with something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
This is really interesting,
It is.
especially in a world that's so obsessed with, you know, individual achievement and competition.
Yeah, it really makes you think.
It does. But what about how this fear of heaven plays out in our relationships with other people?
That's a great point.
Are there any practical implications there?
Oh, absolutely. The source material emphasizes how important it is to treat other people with kindness and respect,
Okay.
even when it's hard.
Right.
Because how we interact with others is a reflection of our relationship with this higher power.
Okay, so it's not just about what's going on inside us.
Right.
It's also about how we act towards others.
Exactly.
Like how we treat that barista who gets our order wrong or that coworker who steals our ideas.
Exactly. Those everyday moments become opportunities to practice this fear of heaven.
I see.
It's about seeing the worth and dignity in every single person,
Okay.
no matter who they are or how they treat us.
Hmm.
The source material even says that how we treat others is a measure of our own spiritual development.
Wow, that's pretty powerful.
It is, isn't it?
It is. It really puts things in perspective.
Yeah.
Suddenly that rude customer or annoying coworker becomes a chance to put this fear of heaven into action.
Right.
It's like a spiritual test.
Yeah, it's a good way to think about it. The source material suggests that these challenges, those tough encounters, they're actually opportunities for us to grow.
Hmm.
They force us to face our own ego and choose compassion instead of judgment.
So instead of getting annoyed by those challenging interactions,
Yeah,
we see them as chances to practice this fear of heaven.
exactly. And to actually become better people.
Wow.
And you know what? The source material even gives us specific advice on how to handle those situations with grace and compassion.
What kind of advice?
It talks about listening, trying to understand,
Okay.
and responding with kindness even when it's hard.
This is starting to sound less like fear and more like love, or at least a really deep respect for others and for something bigger than ourselves. Am I way off base here?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Actually, the source material uses the word awe to describe this fear of heaven.
Mm.
It's about recognizing how vast and mysterious existence is and where we fit into it all.
I see.
And that can lead to a really deep sense of humility and gratitude.
Okay.
And even
I'm starting to see how this all connects. It's about understanding that we're part of something bigger and that shapes how we view our achievements, our relationships, and even our challenges.
Yeah.
But what about success? How does fear of heaven change how we think about success?
That's another area where the source material offers a really fascinating perspective. You see, it argues that true success isn't about external things like money or status.
Okay.
It's about aligning ourselves with this higher power.
So it's not that we can't be ambitious or have nice things,
Right.
but it's about defining success on our own terms that connect with something bigger.
Exactly. The source material suggests that when we chase after external markers of success, we're often chasing an illusion.
I see.
True fulfillment comes from living a life of meaning and purpose, a life that aligns with our deepest values.
That's a really powerful message, especially in our culture that's so fixated on material success.
It is.
It's like fear of heaven is giving us a whole new way to measure our lives, a new way to define what it means to be successful.
That's a great way to put it. It's about shifting our focus away from external validation
Okay.
and towards internal alignment.
Hmm.
It's about recognizing that real success isn't about what we have,
Right.
but about who we become.
Okay, I'm really starting to see how deep and relevant this ancient proverb is.
It really is.
But I gotta be honest, this whole fear of heaven thing, it still sounds a little scary.
Yeah.
Is there a way to reconcile that sense of fear with the feelings of love and awe and gratitude we've been talking about?
That's a really insightful question. And actually, the source material talks about this too. You see, the Hebrew word for fear is yira.
Okay.
And it doesn't exactly mean terror or dread.
Mhm.
It's more about having a profound reverence and respect for something that's both powerful and mysterious.
So it's less about being afraid and more about having deep respect.
Yeah.
A sense of awe, like standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon and just being completely overwhelmed by its vastness and beauty.
That's a perfect analogy. It's about recognizing that we're part of something way bigger than ourselves.
Wow.
Something that inspires both awe and humility, and that recognition can actually be a source of both strength and comfort.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. So it's not about cowering in fear,
No.
but about approaching life with a sense of reverence and wonder.
Exactly.
But how do we actually cultivate that sense of awe and wonder in our everyday lives?
Well, that's where the source material gets really practical. It gives us a whole bunch of suggestions for how to cultivate this fear of heaven in our daily routines.
Like what?
And a lot of them are surprisingly simple.
Okay, give me the lowdown on these practical tips. I'm ready to trade in my anxiety for some awe and wonder.
Okay, well, one of the simplest but most powerful practices is cultivating gratitude. Taking time each day to appreciate all the good stuff in our lives, even the small things.
Okay.
That can help us shift from a feeling of scarcity to a feeling of abundance.
Okay, I can see how gratitude can really make a difference.
It really can.
But what else can we do to tap into this fear of heaven?
Well, the source material also talks about how important it is to spend time in nature.
Yeah.
Immersing ourselves in the natural world can help us connect with something larger than ourselves, and it brings out that sense of awe and wonder.
I love that nature really has a way of reminding us of our place in the grand scheme of things.
It does, doesn't
You
it?
can't really feel self-important when you're standing under a sky full of stars.
Exactly.
Or listening to the ocean waves crashing.
It puts things in perspective.
It really does.
Yeah.
And the source material also highlights acts of kindness. It suggests that treating others with compassion and generosity helps us connect with that spark of divinity inside each of us.
It's a beautiful idea, isn't it?
It is.
Hmm.
So it's not just about thinking deep thoughts and looking inward.
Right.
It's also about how we interact with the world around us.
Yeah.
Our actions actually matter.
Absolutely. Our actions are a reflection of what's going on inside.
Hmm.
When we choose to act with kindness and compassion, we're not just making the world better.
Yeah.
We're also cultivating that fear of heaven within ourselves.
This is starting to sound less like religious rules and more like a guide to living a meaningful life.
It really is, isn't it?
It's about finding that balance between taking responsibility for our actions
Yeah,
and acknowledging that we're part of something much bigger.
exactly. And the source material makes a really strong case that embracing this balance can bring us a deeper sense of purpose and joy.
And resilience, too.
Absolutely. It's about finding our place in the grand tapestry of existence
Yeah.
and living in harmony with the forces that shape our lives.
This has been a really amazing conversation.
Yeah.
We've explored the meaning of fear of heaven from all these different angles.
Yeah, we have.
And I think the biggest takeaway for me is that it's not about living in fear,
No?
but about living with awe, humility, and a deep connection to something beyond ourselves.
I couldn't agree more. It's about recognizing that we're not alone on this journey.
Mm.
There's a force that guides us, supports us, and challenges us to be our best selves.
You know what? I think that's a really empowering message.
It
It
is.
takes the pressure off of us to control everything
Right.
and encourages us to surrender to something bigger.
It does.
And in that surrender, maybe we find peace and purpose and even joy.
Yeah, you've got to, it's a paradox. But sometimes letting go is how we find ourselves.
Right.
And that's the essence of fear of heaven.
This deep dive has given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
This ancient proverb suddenly feels so relevant to our lives today.
It does.
It reminds us that even in a world that's obsessed with control and success, there's a deeper wisdom that can lead us to a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's a timeless message that speaks to something deep within us all.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listeners to remember?
What's the key insight that can help them apply this fear of heaven concept to their own lives?
Yeah, what's the one thing you want them to walk away with?
I think the most important thing to remember is that this fear of heaven is not something to be afraid of.
Right.
It's a source of strength, resilience, and deep connection.
Mm.
It's about embracing the mystery of existence and living in harmony with those forces that shape our lives.
Okay.
It's a journey that's open to everyone, no matter who they are or what they believe.
Beautifully said. So to our listeners out there, we encourage you to keep exploring this fear of heaven idea in your own lives.
Yeah.
See where it takes you, what it reveals to you, and how it can change the way you understand yourself and the world around you.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, well, until next time, keep diving deep and embracing the mystery of it all. As we've been talking about this fear of heaven, I've been thinking about how it might apply to some of the really hard stuff that people go through.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what about those times when life throws us those curveballs, those moments of loss or grief, or even just plain bad luck?
That's such an important question. And the source material actually talks about this a lot. It acknowledges that life is full of challenges.
Right.
And that suffering is just a part of being human.
So it's not about pretending that everything is always perfect and happy.
Not at all. In fact, the source material suggests that it's in those dark and difficult moments that this fear of heaven can actually be even more important.
Really?
It's not about knowing all the answers or understanding why things happen,
Right.
but about finding strength and resilience when we're faced with the unknown.
So it's more about how we respond to those challenges
Yeah.
than about trying to avoid them altogether.
Exactly. The source material emphasizes that our struggles can actually be opportunities.
Okay.
Opportunities for growth and transformation.
Mm.
It's when we're pushed to our limits that we discover our true strength and resilience.
That makes sense, but it's definitely not easy.
Oh, it's not.
I mean, when you're going through something really tough,
Yeah.
it's hard to see it as an opportunity for growth. It feels like all you can do is just get through it.
Absolutely. The source material acknowledges that these are not easy concepts to grasp,
Right.
especially when we're hurting.
Yeah.
But it does offer some really helpful guidance on how to navigate those tough times with grace and courage.
Okay. I'm really interested to hear more about this.
Yeah.
What kind of guidance does it give us for dealing with those difficult moments in life?
Well, one key thing it suggests is to turn to our community for support.
Okay.
The source material really stresses how important human connection is.
Hmm.
especially during hard times. It reminds us that we don't have to go through tough stuff alone.
That's so true. Having a support system of friends, family, or even a spiritual community
Mm.
can make a huge difference when you're struggling.
It really can.
It reminds you that you're not the only one,
Right.
that other people have gone through similar challenges.
Exactly. And the source material also encourages us to find comfort in ritual and tradition. Whether it's prayer or meditation or even just spending time in nature, these practices can help us connect with something bigger than ourselves
Right.
and find a sense of peace in the midst of all the chaos.
So it's about finding those practices, those things that help us feel grounded and connected,
Yeah.
even when the world feels like it's falling apart.
You got it. And the source material also reminds us that even in the darkest of times,
Yeah.
there's always hope.
Mm.
It might not be obvious right away, but it's there,
Okay.
just below the surface.
I see.
Sometimes all it takes is a little shift in perspective to see it.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how this fear of heaven can be a comfort,
Yeah,
a source of strength, even when things are really tough.
it can be.
But I've got to be honest, I'm still a little hung up on that word fear.
I understand.
How can we connect that feeling of fear with all this talk about love and awe and connection?
That's a great question. And actually, the source material addresses this directly. It explains that the Hebrew word for fear, which is yera,
Mm.
has a much broader meaning than the way we typically use fear in English. It includes a whole range of emotions like reverence, awe, and even love.
So it's not so much about feeling terrified,
Right.
but about having a really deep respect and appreciation for something much greater than us.
Exactly. It's
Hmm.
about recognizing how vast and mysterious existence is
Yeah.
and understand where we fit into it all. And that can make us feel both humble and amazed.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. It's not about living in fear, but about approaching life with a sense of wonder and humility.
Exactly.
And that's a beautiful way to live.
It really is. It's
Yeah.
about recognizing that we're part of something so much bigger than ourselves.
Hmm.
A tapestry that's woven with both joy and sorrow, light and darkness. And when we embrace all of it,
Mm.
that's when we discover the true depth and richness of life.
This whole conversation has been so insightful.
It has been, hasn't it?
We've looked at fear of heaven from all these different angles.
We have.
And I think the biggest takeaway for me is that it's not about living in fear, but about living with awe, humility, and a deep connection to something greater than ourselves.
I couldn't agree more. It's about recognizing that we're not alone,
Hmm.
that there's a force guiding us, supporting us, and pushing us to be our best selves.
And you know what? I think that's a really empowering message. It takes the pressure off of trying to control everything
Right.
and allows us to surrender to something bigger.
Exactly.
And in that surrender, maybe we find peace, purpose, and even joy.
Beautifully said. Sometimes letting go is the key to finding ourselves.
Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on.
It is.
Thanks so much for joining me on this journey as we explore this fascinating and thought-provoking concept.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all our listeners out there, we encourage you to keep exploring this fear of heaven in your own lives.
Yeah, keep digging.
See where it leads you, what it shows you, and how it can enrich your understanding of yourself and the world around you.
Wonderful advice.
And until next time, keep diving deep and embracing the mystery of it all.